Namaste guys, it's your boy Crypto Gurkha and welcome to Sit and Talk. Why sit and talk? It's because while I was in Bangalore, I conducted 2 spontaneous interviews with some of our ecosystem's top leaders. For the first episode, I've got Naman from ZKX on the show. We talked about hot topics such as FTX and the community program. Though it's already been 2 months since I did these interviews, the topics will always stay relevant in terms of DeFi. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and here's the intro. So, hi guys. As mentioned, I met up with Naman spontaneously here at Starknet CZ, and we were like, oh yeah, let's do a short interview. So here we are. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure running into you randomly without planning, guys. I think that's the best thing.
How have you been?
Pretty
last time we
good.
met was in Paris, I guess?
Yeah. I think the last 6 months have been quite interesting for all of us, for the industry as well. But I'm very fortunate to say, personally, professionally, we've really been unscathed. We've been building, deep in. A bear market is a builder's market after all. I think we're really aligning with that philosophy right now. Keeping our heads down, building it through. And yeah, that's how it's really been. I think overall from an events perspective as well, I think after Paris, we did, because the reality was that most of our time was actually going to a lot of major events. So we kind of scaled down on the events. And we're actually coming much closer to some hard deadlines for the next phase of our project of ZKX. So we were the main focus was getting together, figuring out the strategy, both on the build as well as the launch. And that's what essentially the last 6 months have been.
So what kind of work did you do over the last 6 months? Because last time in Paris, I met up with Ed and we briefly talked about the project you're doing. So give us a short recap.
Sure. So since Paris till now, I believe we a lot of development work in terms of smart contracts. Our audits are completed. We got a raving review from Nethermind. Our code had more than 10,000 lines of Cairo, which was quite massive. It was one of the largest Cairo projects that they had audited. We came off with flying colors. On the dev side, in general, the overall protocol has also evolved a little bit. We are working on new integrations. We were massively closing out on potential partners for the launch, which is very important. So to launch something like ZKX, right? Not only it's our own what we build, you also need the right sort of ecosystem around it. So on a BD and strategy side, we've kind of shortlisted data providers. We were chit-chatting with market makers, fiat on-ramps and off-ramps, payment partners. So we've kind of shortlisted, lined up all the core partners that we really need to launch ZKX. So I would say on the development side, a lot of work was done. The audits were completed, flying colors. We've also logged in most of our majority partners. In fact, some of our partnership announcements have just come out. Redstone is our first official data partner. More of that coming in the next couple of weeks. So you stay tuned for more and more announcements from us. The markets have been very interesting as well.
I agree.
So we've also kept a very solid eye on our markets. The reality is that even though personally it might not have affected us, but it does affect the ecosystem. It affects the users we build this for. So it's very important for us to understand the core issues that actually plague these markets. And I'm very happy to say that the idea for ZKX has always been, since day one, to address these fundamental problems. And what we're seeing in the markets these days, it is just an exaggeration or the actual reality of how these problems can, when they actually surface, what happens. So from day one, we were building a product that was focusing on full decentralization, self-custody, all the right aspects, all the problems that now seem very front page, but at that point, they really seem like, it's something just core devs used to talk about.
Obviously FTX happened, the whole fiasco. I believe DeFi will be more stronger than ever. So what do you think after, especially for ZKX, how will it be?
It's a very interesting topic. The FTX collapse, it has multiple angles over here. On one side, and we just had a panel on this as well, and this is something very interesting. When we saw the FTX collapse, the first thing that came to my mind that there's going to be a division in terms of thought processes. It's power to DeFi, power to code, or is it going to be maybe more regulations that are going to come in? And I think the industry is standing at a very important stage right now. We are seeing volumes go from centralized exchanges to DEXs in a bear market. which is very interesting. So you see the trust aspect has come into play. Yes, a lot of people have started doing proof of reserves, but to get into the reality of a lot of this, proof of reserves itself is not really, it's more of like a snapshot. What you need is a solution which only a DEX can offer, which is having a very live access to all the reserves, everything out there. So full transparency is very hard for a centralized exchange to actually achieve, irrespective of what you see on Twitter, what you see a lot of the exchanges talking about. The absolute reality is that it's very difficult to do something until unless you're built from day one, keeping that in mind. And I think I'm very proud to say that that's what we had in mind while building while building ZKX. That from day one, the ideas of having something truly transparent, truly something that can be trustworthy, but it is also usable to the actual retail users, removing the abstractions of a clunky DeFi experience and having a very real world centralized user experience, but with the safety, security, and trust of a decentralized backend. That has always been the golden goose, and I think we're on the right track over there.
You briefly mentioned volumes on the exchanges.
Yes.
And especially like DEXs. Is it even possible to do like wash trading to pump up the volumes or spoof trading as such?
It's the reality is that what has happened right now, a lot of capital has really evaporated. Even after Luna, we saw something very similar, right? What happens that after something big goes down, there is a series of after effects. We're seeing the after effects of FTX right now, just showing to pop up right now. And the reality is we call these floaters. These are very large firms that had a lot of exposure, but nobody knew about it. But then they actually go belly up. And it's the same thing. So if I talk about overall liquidity, not just wash, I'm going to talk about overall liquidity in the market over here. I think trust will come back, and it takes some time. Because even after Luna, it took us a couple of months to regain trust in the markets again. A bit of trust. It was a bear market, but people were kind of coming back again. And you could actually feel that when you come to conferences, when you go and meet these builders, these users. I think with FTX, it's the same thing right now. I expect to see some more positivity come out of it. The rise of DEXs, the rise of transparency, clarity, and trust over and beyond everything else. But it will take some amount of time. And I think because the retail user right now is scared.
I agree.
They've withdrawn their money out, they're sitting over there, and they're just waiting for it. They're really waiting for the next, I would say, the next clarity that is really needed in this industry. What exchanges are going to belly up? Who's going to be the last man standing? What sort of new trust protocols are going to be placed? I think that's what is really coming over here. And I think time will really show this. But I think time will also prove, and all of this is also going to prove the actual I would say, importance of decentralization of self-custody, something that we've been talking about for so long. I think now the actual retail world, the actual end retail user is finally understanding the importance of these things.
It's basically more or less our time as an industry to prove ourselves that we're also, we don't have like bad actors, bad players. They're also like good players more or less. And I think like every industry has bad players.
I think every industry goes through evolution.
Correct.
And this is the evolution of Web3 that is happening. Eventually, this is the new internet. Look at Web2. It was the rise of ecosystems and platforms, centrally owned. And that kind of spilled over into early Web3. We have massive, massive exchanges right now. And the question was, the end retail user used to always trust the ideology that a large company has their interests at heart, which is not really true. And now they're actually seeing the difference. The large company is there for the stakeholders, not for the users. And that is why power to the people is extremely important in these times. And I think they're really understanding this aspect of it, which is really going to be industry changing. Really is.
Yes. I mean, I'm really looking forward for all the new DEXs upcoming, DeFi generating new products for retail as well, making it easier, accessible. I think that will be a huge wave which will come.
Actually,
definitely.
You made a very interesting point. If I talk about new DEXs, I think this collapse has also exposed a lot of inherent problems with some very successful DEXs.
Okay.
Especially, I take the example of something like a GMX. The reality is that, GMX saw massive amounts of growth in the last couple of quarters. Massive growth. But if anything that we learn from the Terra collapse, and I think those learnings actually come back right now, is you understand the risks of one-sided liquidity, you understand the risks of these sort of AMM models. The reality is that if the underlying token asset on one side devalues itself very quickly, and you have another token that is balancing it, it disrupts the ecosystem very quickly. And what FTX really tells us is a lot of AMMs, centralized or decentralized, it's very important to understand risk management. Even DEXs need to focus on risk management, protection of customer funds, which is one of the most important things, which nobody is really talking about. I think, and transparency also comes from the fact, I personally feel it might also be the end of Anon teams. It might just be the end of it. Because to get trust, you need to be out there. You need to meet these people, you need to know who you're building and who's really leading it. And eventually give the charge over, become a DAO, and that's what we've also planned. Build something and pass it on to the people to run it the way they need it to run. And I think that is the only approach. If you want this to be long term, you want it to be sustainable.
From the people for the people.
Exactly.
I mean, speaking of people, you've got a great community. You've been supporting the StarkNet ecosystem with all your conferences, meetups, and so forth. Could you like briefly tell us something about your
100%.
events you've been doing? Like,
Yes. Something we're very proud of. So I think around Paris, that's when we basically did the first official event of StarkCon. StarkCon is an initiative that we kicked off, and we got a lot of support from the overall community, Starkware, all the other projects as well. It's basically an initiative to create awareness about StarkNet Cairo in general across India and across emerging markets. The idea is very simple. This is the next threshold of the next frontier of really Ethereum expansion. You know, and one of the fundamental problems with any new ecosystem is you need the right kind of developers to be able to know the language, to support the projects, to grow the ecosystem. How do you solve this problem? We are working on Cairo. Even when we started working with ZK, even when we started developing ZKX, the reality was that there were no Cairo devs. You know, as you all know, StarkNet actually uses Cairo. The problem was that we had to train our devs ourselves in Solidity to have that in-house knowledge base. But that is not how an ecosystem expands. You need enough devs out there who are interested, who know this language, who know this product, for the ecosystem to really build. And that is what StarkCon is. We've right now, I'm proud to say, I think we've engaged with the top 8 IITs in the country. We've done about 8 or 9 events. We've touched close to 3,000 devs in India and exposed them to the concept of Cairo, you know, to making them understand the value and utility of building on this next frontier of technology. These are college students, one of the brightest colleges in India, that are extremely interested because this is something so new for them. And it's so surprising that, look at a market like India. It is one of the largest tech bases in the world. If you look at Web 2 in general, one of the largest, most number of devs kind of came from countries like India. But if I look at Web 3 right now, even Solidity adoption is very less. There needs to be this massive wave. And who's going to create this wave of interest if it's not going to be projects like us who are actually kind of scaling this and leading the charge from the front? And that's really what StarkNet is all about. We also have, you know, we also came up with a boot camp. We had a lot of, you know, people are applicants for it. Next month we're going to have an online Cairo boot camp, first of its kind, which where these end projects can connect directly with the Starkware team, work closely with them, get that learnings, get that exposure, build something on this new technology. And I think that is the right way to kickstart an ecosystem.
well, we are currently in India. So what's next for the StarkNet India community, in your opinion? Any final words for
100%, yeah. It's extremely interesting in terms of how we're seeing. This was the first StarkNet CC in India today. And I think it was quite a room full of crowd. I think it was very interesting. When something so fringe is happening in India, but the adoption interest is so high, I think there is a lot of interest. We are doing our best with StarkCon. We have more StarkCon events coming up. We're really trying to have that grassroots approach of scaling all of this up. And I think it's been extremely interesting. On the other side, even on the ZKX front, I think the next lineup for us is basically, we've been working very rigorously on a community incentives program, which is going to be more details, which is various ways of how we're going to engage our community for ZKX. I think that has also been beautifully, I would say, structured, and you will see some amazing orchestration in the following months. we do have to, in a way, we have to be a little fluid with the timelines. And I'm being very candid over here. We are building on top of StarkNet, and our timelines need to kind of align with the StarkNet launch dates as well. So we have to be very dynamic in these things, and yet we also have to time the markets. So a lot of these factors of timelines come into play when we really think about launch dates. But as of now, we do have it probably in the next quarter. We're going in for our testnet launch. It's going to be super, super interesting. Our community team is doing an amazing job with the community. I think we had 1,404 people join in on our community call that crashed the Discord server. I don't even know large centralized exchanges who ever had that much sort of attendance. It is unparalleled to anything else. And that really states the kind of execution we as a team are doing, because we also have the right kind of product. I think that's extremely important.
So guys, you heard it here. Personally, alpha, testnet soon. So thank you once again for this interview. I think this should
Always
be
a
it.
pleasure.
And guys, I'll add in all the details down below as usual. And thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Naman.
Yes, and we look forward to meeting you in the next events along with Gurkha,
Yeah.
wherever we go. All right.
See you, guys.